my way. Recording stuff.
Yes,
Sorry.
recording this.
Yep, the recording.
Okay, welcome this morning then. Any apologies for absence?
Apologies from Joe Nugent, Homes England, please.
Okay, do we have any new members or any substitutes?
So John Mather, Homes England, substituting for Joe Nugent today.
Okay,
Chair Kerry Scott substituting for Paul Kitson from Birmingham City Council.
can you put your mic on because they can't hear.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Say that again.
Yeah,
Kerry Scott substituting for Paul Kitson from Birmingham City Council.
right, all presently correct then. Moving on, there will be a verbal update on the Trailblazer devolution deal, which is now called the deep devolution deal. It's a mouthful, isn't it? But having said that, the DDD, as we call it, was of course not announced when this agenda went out. That has now been done. I think the DDD means done to death. Having said that, it was good news, and we'll hear about that later if you haven't read all the press reports to date. Moving on then to the declaration of interest. Do we have any? No. Right. Any minutes of the 23rd of January? Seem all right to me? Yes?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to the devolution deal then. We were with Michael Gove on Monday to do the official signing, but basically we knew most of the detail, but I think it's a good news story. We could always ask for more, but at the end of the day, I think we have to be satisfied with what we've got. Who's picking that up? Rob?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. So I've just put a few slides together over the last few days, just in terms of the text that was agreed in the devolution deal on the housing and land items that were included within the deal, just to update members. As Councillor Bird said at the time of writing of the report for this paper, this board, sorry, unfortunately we didn't have the agreed deal text, so I couldn't update in terms of the papers. That's why I'm doing it verbally and through a presentation today. Just to be clear, throughout the whole process of the devolution deal negotiations over the last 12 months, there have been four main asks of the Housing and Land Delivery Board, which have been included within the negotiated deal. That's further regeneration funding, a land reform programme, particularly around public land, a levelling up zones, and also an affordable housing proposal for government. And I'm pleased to say that we have had positive response on all four of those. So I'll just go through some of the main areas of that this morning in the agreed text, if that's okay. So first of all, in terms of...
You can speak up a bit, Rob. I can just about hear you, but others might not be able to online.
Sorry, let me just try the slides again, because that seems to be working for everybody. So I'll just do that again, Chair. And excuse me, I've got a bit of a
Chair, can you plug your laptop in if you sign into the meeting?
Yeah.
Can we have those slides emailed to us right now?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, so we can come back and give us some. Yeah, yeah, it might be difficult if like, yeah.
Sorry, so we're back now, back on screen. Thankfully, it's now working. And apologies for the French voice. So in terms of the regeneration funding, what's been agreed through the devolution deal is there'll be a further £100 million worth of devolved funding to the CA to drive placemaking, housing and urban regeneration across the region. This gives us far more flexibility than we've had previously in other funds in terms of the types of development we can support through our funding. So it means that we can deploy funds to both commercial development, mixed use and estate regeneration purposes, as well as housing units. And we have got a target of 4,000 homes within this fund of £100 million as well. But the real critical point here is that this does then give us that additional flexibility and ability to deliver beyond the existing remit of the funds, to give us more opportunity and to continue to build a pipeline of comprehensive schemes across the region. So really significant news and adds to the already substantial brownfield funding that we have for the region. Secondly, and I appreciate there's a lot of text on here, this is taken straight from the deal because I thought it was important to be clear on the specific language that is used in the deal. So this is the Land Reform and Public Land Programme. This sets out a public land partnership with government. So central government, led by the Cabinet Office, will sign a partnership with the Combined Authority, which will give the region both overview and decision-making powers over how public land, particularly government land, is disposed in the region. So previously, where the government agencies were looking to dispose of land in the region didn't necessarily have any input or say over that. We will now, through this new partnership that will be worked with the Cabinet Office, have the opportunity to inform and influence those decisions. This builds on the existing work of the Place Pilots programme, and there is a Place Pilots update later on today's agenda, where the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, the Cabinet Office, WMCA and all local authorities have been working closely over the last few months to develop new approaches to how we best use public land assets in the future, both through use of existing buildings in better ways and also how do we use the land assets to deliver the social value that we are looking to achieve. Important to say, as part of this agreement as well, there is an agreement from the department to work on the opportunities through the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill about how compulsory purchase orders could be used differently in the future. The Combined Authority area will be a test bed for those new approaches. So again, a real commitment for government to do things differently in the West Midlands. Move now on to affordable housing, and this is in two phases. So again, lots of text here, and I will share the slides as been requested afterwards. Two phases to the affordable housing programme settlement within the devolution deal. First part relates to the existing programme, which began in 2021 and ends in 2026. This programme is delivered by Homes England and maintained and administered by Homes England, working with providers of social and affordable housing throughout the region. Through the devolution deal, the Combined Authority will now have the means to set the overall direction, strategy and objectives for the delivery of the funds within the region, and a ring-fenced minimum of £200 million of affordable housing programme spend, which could rise up to 400 million. That's the target between now and 2026 to build more social and affordable homes. So clearly a substantial financial element to this, but also the opportunity for the Combined Authority and its partners to work much closer with Homes England on how this funding will be deployed in future. We're already in really positive discussions with Homes England at this stage to look at how we mobilise and begin this work as soon as possible. So that's the current programme up till 2026. And then the second phase is post 2026, when the new Affordable Homes programme or any successor programme agreed by government will begin. At that stage, the WMCA will become the key strategic decision maker over how that investment and the spend of Affordable Homes programme will take part in the region. So from 2026 onwards, there will be full devolution of the funding to the Combined Authority and its partners to deliver in the region. So again, moving from a pilot phase, if you like, through the next 3 years of the existing programme into a much more devolved and stronger relationship between the Combined Authority and its partners, negotiating directly with government over the allocation to the region for the affordable housing programme from 2026 onwards. Again, a commitment from the department to work on this more flexible approach during the current programme is written into the deal. So this is very much a trailblazing element of the devolution deal, as we've said. And then finally, from the four main areas of the proposals into government, we have the levelling up zones. Members who've been on this board for some time will remember that we've been developing these zones since around February last year in terms of the proposals to government. There was then a brief interlude of the investment zones proposals from the Liz Truss government, in which all local authorities put in substantial proposals. Those investment zones have not gone any further. However, the work that was done at that time has really helped us to build the approach and the evidence into government to be able to agree to levelling up zones. And the levelling up zones, 6 of which are included and named within the devolution deal, are now to be developed with local designation by the region. So the region will decide, be given the powers to decide how these zones are established, There is a commitment to 100% business rates growth above the baseline for the next 25 years within these zones, which gives a clear fiscal incentive for the zones to be set up. And alongside that was also a commitment to invest a further 60 million into the proposed Metro Line extension, alongside the approaches to affordable housing, brownfield land funding, and also skills funding that's included within the whole devolution deal itself. So the level zones are seen very much as being a geographical focus for many of the elements within the whole devolution deal, alongside the existing and noted points there around business rates and things. So again, a substantial success in terms of the region's ability to develop and propose to government very different approaches to how we take these things forward and to get them agreed within the devolution deal. So significant success. The umbrella approach that's also noted within the devolution deal is a strategic place partnership between government as a whole and the Combined Authority to bring all of these elements together in a place partnership on how we work better together, including DLUC, the Cabinet Office, Homes England, and other government agencies. So there's very much there will be a written memorandum of understanding a future delivery plan of how this strategic plan moves forward. So it's not a short-term quick fix through the devolution deal. It's very much seen as a long-term strategic relationship between the region and central government. And then just to summarise the numbers there on the last slide there, just to show some of the main points that I just talked about. 200 million up to 400 million affordable housing settlement for the region, a further 100 million pounds for regeneration funding, land partnership with government, 6 levelling up zones, and 1 strategic place partnership as the umbrella across the whole deal. So that's the summary of the main points, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. I think there's 2 or 3 things that come out of this. One is that we should be very proud that we've actually delivered to date on what we said we would do. Hence, the money that we've spent, and we've delivered the housing we said we would. I have to pay special thank you to the Mayor, because I'm aware that even at the 11th hour, we hadn't quite got the amount of money we wanted for housing, and at 10 o'clock on the Sunday night, I understand Andy managed to secure some extra funding, which is where we got to. 2 other points, which I briefly discussed with Gareth, is that we've got to find some more housing associations, I believe, some that we've probably not had contact with at this point in time. That's where Homes England can assist us, because I think the amount of money we've got is perhaps more than the normal housing associations in the locality can cope with. So, Gareth, you've got a little note here. You want to read that?
Yeah, just to give the board thanks, Rob, for that summary. Just to give the board a bit of a sense of scale. So this now means that since I've been involved in the Housing and Land Board in 2018, we've now secured £1 billion of funding through this board from central government in terms of housing, regeneration and land funding, which I think is quite an achievement actually as a board to have secured that money through various business cases we've put in and got the trust and confidence of government. That was quite a big thing. I was pleased to accompany Mike to the event on Monday, and the big message I got was a sense of real trust from central government that the West Midlands has the ability and has proven the ability to deliver and to do what it says. I think the other piece, the board has been really concerned for quite a number of years about not having employment land funding and funding for mixed use schemes, and the new funding that we've secured can be specifically targeted at commercial and mixed use and estate renewal schemes, which we haven't been able to do up to this point. So though we've delivered on the housing funds we've secured up to this point, this now means through both the levelling up zones and the new funds that Rob announced, we can now really push employment, mixed use, town centre projects, those sorts of schemes, which up to this point have been much harder for us to fund under the board. And then my final point, Chair, if it's okay, is it is worth just sort of reflecting what a big transfer of power and responsibility this is from Whitehall to the region around affordable housing, regeneration, land, property, all the things that were in Rob's slide, in 2016 were all controlled by Whitehall. So actually it is worth just reflecting on that. Is quite a big shift of power and responsibility, and obviously this board has a really important role to play on those items shared that Rob discussed, and the local authorities around the table. Your role in providing the projects that means we can deploy the funding is absolutely critical. There's one thing getting the scale of funding. What's most important is we deploy the funding at pace to the locally agreed priority projects. That's where Rob and I will be tested by the Treasury and central government every month from now on. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. Thank you, Gareth. Yeah, well said. Great presentation. I welcome the 100 million coming. We have an area in Wolverhampton, Parkfields, an old school building, brownfield area. We're looking to build up to about 200 plus houses, much needed, 3-4 bedroom houses. Sadly, obviously, with the Black Country, there's a lot of mining issues. You know, there's a lot of mining shafts that are still popping up here and there. So this funding that's available, we welcome that. We welcome that, you know. We could take a big chunk out now. So I've thrown my hat to the ring already to say, yes, we're ready. Excellent news. Thank you for that. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, and I think much credit is due to the officers that worked on this. I have to say at times I got fed up of hearing the Trailblazer devolution deal and a different take on it every time. It's like everything else. If you do the beauty contest, sometimes you win the prize. Whether you're first or second really doesn't matter as long as you get something. But I think we've done rather well, really. And there'll be those who would criticise, oh, no, we could have had more. Well, the answer is, once we deliver what we said we would do here, then we could go back and knock on the door and say, we've done that. Any more money going? You know, and I think that's what we've got to do. Okay, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I think it'd be good to have the slides, even if it's at 9 o'clock in the morning before the meeting. Yeah, well, email just yeah.
They are email.
Yeah.
I've just received them now.
Yeah, no, but before the presentation, so we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was late because we didn't know until Friday night.
No, but even 9 o'clock this morning or something, so we could have them when the presentation is being you know, all the writing on the presentation. It's always nice to have it in front of you if you can. And so if you know, even 5 minutes before the presentation would be useful, especially for people on.
Then we could complain about late reports. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Bernie, I won't complain about late reports. I understand officers work hard. I mean, it's a great scheme, really good and good work. I just want to understand in simple, that is how much power has been devolved. You know, what is the relationship now? Money, we've got this money. Is it completely in our purview, or are there still controls and audits and stuff? So is that sort of the sense of how much is being devolved, really?
So maybe it's worth taking each one in turn, if that's okay. So on affordable housing, it's a full devolution post 2026 of the affordable housing programme to the combined authority. That's what it says in the deal, and it's a partial devolution between now and 2026. And being frank, councillor, that's because at this moment in time, the combined authority doesn't have any involvement in the affordable housing programme spend in the region. So we're going from not being involved at all into being involved in quite a significant way very fast. So just from a resourcing of the region collectively, that's quite a step up in influence and control. Coming back to your question, we do have to report into central government on affordable housing on the outcomes and the outputs that are being delivered, because this money is principally designed to deliver affordable homes. That's what was said by the Secretary of State on Monday as well. So that's the sort of number one outcome on that. So that is quite a big shift of power and responsibility. If we go on to the Single Regeneration Fund, what we know on that is likely to have similar criteria to the current Brownfield Housing Fund in terms of those key tests of strategic fit, value for money and deliverability. But we will be able to manage it at a programme level rather than a project level. So what that means, one of the points the chair has raised in previous meetings, is being very tight on something called intervention rates. So how much money you can put in on any individual scheme. as long as we manage it at a programme, as long as the whole 100 million is on track, we can spend more on one scheme than the average and less on another. So we can operate it in a significantly more flexible way. If we take the next one, which is levelling up zones, as Rob said, that will allow for local designation of levelling up zones rather than it being designated nationally. So that's quite a big shift as well in terms of defining the geography. And then as Rob also referred to, the 25-year business rate retention is for the local councils who receive that to decide how they want to spend it to unlock the infrastructure. And again, we'll be judged by outcomes on levelling up zones, not by what we do, but are we delivering the outcomes? And then on the government land, we are the only region in the country to have this. So I think, being honest, councillor, we've got to actually work through what does it mean in practice? Because again, we're going from a point where the region has no major influence on government disposals of land. It's entirely down to Whitehall departments, how they wish to dispose, to this new provision that Rob referred to, where we will have a direct say. How we will make that work in practice, there needs to be quite a lot of work done under the detail. But I hope that gives you a sense. It is quite a significant change, not just of money, but of where the decision making. I think that's what I would say, Chair. It's a change in where does the decisions lie more than anything else.
Thank you, that's very useful. To another point, we've got an ALMO in our authority. So maybe if we look into the housing association, the ALMOs will get maybe a bit of a chance to bid for this land. Because at the moment, ALMOs struggle to get the affordable housing provision. When you develop a site, it's usually very difficult, but maybe it helps to get those, because it helps the ALMO's HRA balance if you can have new housing coming on stream. The problem with HRA accounts is that as housing ages, their affordability decreases, and the way housing associations work is they have an in and out stream. So they always have new houses coming on board where the maintenance is low. They can subsidise the maintenance of the older house. That's a useful thing to look at.
There's also an element of retrofit within the deal for housing. So that also would help in that particular case. I think the point that Gareth makes about the intervention rate, I think our average over the years has been about 28,000 quid. So therefore, over and above that, we've had to look very sceptical at those schemes because there's only one pot of money, and therefore we have to look at the outputs and the cost of that. But I think this does give us a lot more flexibility. To use my colleagues' scheme in Wolverhampton, that probably would have been off the scale before now, because mine shafts can cast anything between 10,000 and 50,000, depending how you're capping them off. So I think that now gives us flexibility for that to go. But everything is based on the business case and the quality of the developer in tow.
I mean, absolutely, but the thing like sharing, I managed to get some really good net zero houses in Solihull because you could share the grant amongst 3 developments and take them as one, and that made it all affordable. That really worked well. So, but on land, this is important because what about the disposal of land? This might be more semi-private sector, where you dispose of the land to a investment company. So I've got an issue in Solihull where a private enterprise disposed of the land, to an investment company, and now you want to put a wayleaf through that land as part of another project. It's the investment company just won't think, so it's whether how much. I know we can't go into the private sector, but in the public sector, do we have control over how the land is managed within the public sector?
Well, there's always constraints when you're selling land in the public sector, purely simply because named parties are something that's a no-no. And I think it's a matter of looking at the scheme in its entirety and seeing which one produces the best outputs at the best possible value for money. And I think all that comes into account, but I think it does give us the flexibility to do so.
I'm more concerned about the PFI route. Like some authorities will take a PFI route.
PFI is very expensive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but if they do, then the land is then sort of out of the equation. And I think I was hoping that we would have through this devolution deal, at least cite any, disposals of land in the public sector that might be not disposals but transfer of control, so to
It
speak.
might give us more opportunity to look at the help to own scheme with public land, because obviously that would be a great success story. I think the only one we've done to date has been in Wolverhampton, which was oversubscribed by 200%. And I think again that's an initiative that we worked on for a couple of years before we actually got a scheme off the ground, and we should be actually rolling that out in other areas and saying this is what works. I had a meeting yesterday with a gentleman, I'll talk to Gareth afterwards, and they were looking to do this kind of scheme in an area, in actual fact it was Highgate Brewery, which is a listed building, it's a brewery, includes in the title, since 1890. And it's quite a large site, and the developer came to see me, which I'll now refer them to the Combined Authority, has got a track record with the Combined Authority already to convert that building, but keep its heritage, but convert it into accommodation and the grounds around it. Now that does two things. It first of all preserves a heritage asset. I mean, Highgate Mard in Walsall is famous. It's more famous than me, which, you know, you've got to say that's something. But at the end of the day, I do believe that there is opportunity now with that flexibility to bring it forward and utilise buildings that would normally just be knocked down.
I'll just put a bid in for shared ownership on that as well. I know it's, you know, you have the thing, but shared ownership has a particularly good value because A, you can have it do it yourself. I.e. people can identify properties and we can go in there, but also on smaller developments it might be available. But it's also very good for the housing revenue account if you have shared ownership. It's hugely beneficial for the housing stock going forward to have shared ownership.
I'm very fortunate I don't have a housing revenue account anymore.
Yeah.
It's always the bane of my life. I'm the worst landlords ever. Gentleman to the right.
Thank you. I think welcome this from Sandwell point of view. And Sandwell has been always pretty much brownfield and nothing to start from scratch. So we welcome this one. Another one, I think from the homelessness task force, we have been asking, you know, to help out the youngsters live and work model. Has that been accounted for in this fair later deal?
Rob?
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, I'll come in on that if that's okay. So we, as the council says, the homelessness task force has proposed a number of things around what they call the live and work model. It's run by a St. Paul's charity at the moment, and there are opportunities to develop that further with Homes England through the Affordable Homes programme. But it's also worth noting there is a specific mention of the live and work scheme within the devolution deal, and the government's commitment to look at potentially using that as a model for further rollout as well. So just to refer to the members to the section of the deal that's specifically about the homelessness provision, there is a reflection there of the live and work model.
Thank you.
Over there, sorry. Come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Susan Ward from the Environment Agency. I think, first of all, absolutely well done. But we would also like to be really part of that strategic place partnership as part of government. And I think there's a big part we can play in helping around the whole resilience piece to climate change and all of that developing. Because there are big watercourses, there are huge across the whole of the conurbations. And there's also some big things we can do in helping deliver that in the levelling up agenda around good green infrastructure and biodiversity natural gain, and finding places where we can do it in the right places.
Certainly so, and I think the EA have got a big part to play in the contamination that we have in the Black Country. Obviously, we have to work hand in hand with you because some of those things that, I mean, the leachate in Phoenix 10, as it was, used to come out in the North Sea, believe it or not. And it was quite famous in Walsall, all the contaminants we were getting rid of in the North Sea. But that now, thanks to the support we've had over the years, now that's been tackled and that site is now coming forward. And I think if we look back, people say, what did you do? Well, we should point to those schemes. Lady from Birmingham.
Thank you, Chair. It might be a question that's a bit of more detail and we may not have the answer to this right now. I just want to echo that it's, you know, it's a fantastic opportunity, isn't it? There's only 2 of you in the country, so that's amazing. Just on the affordable housing programme, really, obviously post 2026, who knows what that future is going to look like for funding. Homes England always keep us guessing, don't they? But is that from a strategic and a decision-making point of view, is that a programme level, or is that to be on a more scheme by scheme level? And then how do we work with local authorities who have key priorities within their areas for the delivery of affordable housing through the current and future AHP programmes? I'm just wondering how that is all going to sort of knit and gel together.
Chair, thank you. So in terms of the overall approach, it will certainly be through a programme level approach, and the detail in the deal from 2026 onwards is pretty much the combined authority, as you say, setting out a strategic approach in the direction and managing the programme as a whole. The dialogue with local authorities will start before then, I'm sure, and will be part of the 2023 onwards. But I think it's very important that we start to work through those plans as soon as we can, really, from the 2026 point of view onwards, in terms of working with local authorities on where they are in the existing programme and what their needs are for the future, so that we can start to build that into the negotiated settlement from 2026 onwards, so that we've got a comprehensive view of what it is that we are seeking to negotiate with them. So it will be a big piece of work from now onwards, I would expect, to make those connections and start to build that.
I think we need to also take on board the political landscape from 2026 could be different. So there's all out elections in many areas. So and government could change, God forbid. Having said that, you know, crystal ball I don't have. Many other things, but certainly not crystal ball. But there we are. Okay, well done. Moving on then, if we may. Oh, sorry. Yes, I missed you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just want to say a couple of words on the help to all. You're absolutely right. I mean, we pioneered the help to all in Wolverhampton, and it's a runaway success. As you know, I keep talking about this. 100 houses, you know, flew off the shelves straight away. Something that we'd like to repeat again, and obviously something that I think will be good to repeat in other areas, as you touched on, because as it says on the tin, the part of the deal is it doesn't tie you to one area. You can live in, let's say, Wolverhampton. You can end up with a job elsewhere in Birmingham, and you can take that scheme to another part, which is perfect. You know, it is a perfect scheme. Finally, Chair, apologies. I've just read the message now. Councillor Thompson sends her apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you indicate, John? No? Silent partner. Good idea. Okay, moving on then, if I may, I think we need to see as well, on a regular basis, schemes that we've got in the pipeline. I know we see that in a different format, but I want to see what progress we're making, and what we've got to do, in my view, is to make sure that those delivery dates are met, because every day inflation goes up, costs go up, and we've only got some, you know, when people start a site, one would like to think they'll finish it, but the way things are at the moment, with the costs going up at a rapid rate of knots, and I think we need to keep a close eye on that. Okay, moving on then to Rob again with his croaky voice. Quarterly report in 22-23.
Before you, so just on the back of what the chair's just said, might be worth the board being aware that in order to access our funding, applicants put in something called an expression of interest, and then they put in a grant application. That's the first bit of the process. So we keep quite a close eye on expressions of interest, because they're quite a good sign as to whether or not the market is sitting tight and not trying to build, or whether there's actually a real active interest in development, because you'd only apply for grant funding if you were willing to commit to a start date. Pleased to say that I think it is true, Rob, isn't it? So every single week of this year thus far, we've had EOIs come in, and the internal approval, so the initial expressions of interest are approved by myself. We have approved expressions of interest every single fortnight. So just in terms of the uptake from 2022 to 2023, we are seeing a significant increase in projects coming into our pipeline, which is really, really positive given the scale of funding, as the chair said, we have to deploy. So hopefully that reassures the board that we are seeing demand coming in for public investment to meet the start dates that we accrue, because a condition of our funding is that developers start. Otherwise, obviously, we can't put funding in unless we can guarantee start dates. So I hope that's important to know.
From the public land point of view, just a comment for Sandwell, really. There is this wish to do Friar Park, but there seems to be an obstacle on the value of the land that Sandwell Council own. I won't go into detail with that publicly, but I met the adjoining landowner yesterday, and he's happy to implement the planning permission he's got for housing. And I'll have a chat after this meeting with Gareth. We've got a meeting online tomorrow with that very gentleman and very company. And I think we can make a huge difference in Sandwell, but we've got to have the cooperation of the council with the land that they own. Okay, talk to you afterwards. Okay, moving on then to Rob, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the standard report we bring to each Housing and Land Delivery Board on the progress made against the deliverables for the year. So our deliverables are set out and agreed by WMCA Board at the start of each financial year. And this is the update of the progress against those deliverables for the Housing and Land up until March of this year. And we bring yearly report to the next meeting of the board. Just to point out some key highlights noted on section 3, one of which is the Planned Pilots programme, which is an update on the next agenda item. There's also the devolution deal negotiations, which we've just talked about in some detail. But also then just to point out under those highlights, developing from the conversation that's just been had about pipeline building. There's a considerable amount of work undertaken across the region by the CA and local partners on building the pipeline of schemes coming through for our funding programmes. That's done on a regular basis with our business and development team and local authority partners on a 4-week, 6-weekly basis with every local authority that's a constituent or non-constituent member of the Combined Authority. We also have regular sessions with developers and with our strategic partners, including also Midlands and G, to begin to continue to build the pipeline schemes coming through. And I think with the new funding streams that we've just been talking about as part of the devolution deal, whilst we already have a considerable amount of commercial and other schemes in the pipeline that are deployment through the new funding, we will certainly be redoubling our efforts in terms of those conversations with housing association partners, LMOs, all others within the sector, to make sure that we are involved with and understanding of the various pipeline needs of all the different parts of the sector in the region, so that we can encourage more and more applications in for the funding. So those are the key highlights for this current report. Section 4 has the summary table of each of the deliverables and an update for each of them within that table. And then also just to add, Chair, that there is the private appendices to this report in the private part of the agenda today, which goes through the approvals through each of the funding programmes.
Any questions on that? No, I'll move the talking stick over to Pat then on the Place Pilot scheme, which is through the One Public Estate.
Thank you very much, Chair. It feels a bit as if I'm coming late to the party, because the purpose of the report is to give an introduction to place pilots, and you've already been talking about it a lot in this meeting. But just for the record, I'd just like to say that this is an additional tool that we have in the box. It's a very clear commitment between the Cabinet Office and ourselves to work on the spatial dimension of place pilots. It's about bringing together public estate owners under a joint central local government leadership. The idea behind it is to optimise investment and to drive delivery around a variety of things, whether it's co-location, disposals, relocations. It's very, very much a focus on place and using strategic asset management to grow our places and to do so in the right way, taking into account all sorts of different interpretations of land value as well. And fundamentally, it's about testing new approaches to how we use public land and how we bring it forward to the best uses of our communities. In terms of the actual work itself, the programme is being led by the Cabinet Office, the Local Government Association and the Office of Government Property. That in itself is a very significant statement because it's bringing together three very powerful public sector organisations, working with ourselves as the only combined authority with a place pilots programme. And the Cabinet Office is organising at the moment a series of workshops. We've had 2 to date. One was a very general introduction. The second was focused on town centres. But I think one of the important parts of this conversation is that this isn't about setting up a general programme. It's about identifying additional opportunities for action. So helping to drive the pipeline of public sector sites that will come forward. And that very much ties in with the flexibilities that we're receiving through the devolution deal and the focus in the devolution deal around public land. The next steps are to keep this conversation going, primarily to develop an implementation plan across these organisations and to continue working with local authorities as we develop this programme. This is very much a programme which brings on board local authorities as important parts of the partnership. And in terms of our ask of you, it's to note the work that has taken place to date and to endorse the continued conversation with government and local authorities on these matters.
Okay. Karen, do you wish to add anything? No? Andy?
Thank you. I welcome this. This is common sense. Is there also engagement with the private land sector? Because obviously when you've got like a series of public sector land, there might be a nice little niche of land in other ownership. So that needs to be engagement with that. Another point is there's also land that has no owner. I've discovered as a councillor, there are plots of land scattered around the West Midlands that have no owner. You know, because for various reasons, someone's messed up on the development or just it was forgotten about. And there's land that sort of has no owner and it sort of defaults to local authority. Can we bring that land into this scheme as well?
Land that is unknown ownership. Somebody always owns the land, you know, but it's the unknown ownership. Many of these are what we call bona vacante, which basically means that if the company has gone bust or the person's gone bankrupt, it reverts to the Crown, and that can be difficult. But the Crown luckily only have one solicitor, so the Crown solicitor are quite cooperative because the way it works with the Crown, they can't sell part of the land, they can only sell the whole package. So that's sometimes a stumbling block. There is also a process for obtaining land that is in unknown ownership. Then you can advertise it in the London Gazette, and then effectively you can also take out an insurance bond if somebody comes out and says, hey, you've built that on my land, I want my money. So providing you've done everything possible to identify the landowner, there are ways and means when we can do that, but it is a difficulty. Sometimes it's only a minor strip of land, which we all know as a ransom strip. The case there is Stokes versus Cambridge, which basically says that can result in 50% of the value of the uplift going to the unknown owner when he comes out the woodwork. In other words, you spend all your money doing something, he says, oh, thanks for that, can I have half? So there we are.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, yeah, again, I welcome the report. Got some great examples on this one. The Oxley Wellbeing Centre, the canal site, the Colwell Street Depot. There's so many examples we can give you from Wolverhampton, what we've done in regards to this paper. And the just going on to what you were saying there, you're absolutely right. We've actually done that in Oxley. We've taken on adjacent piece of land, and we're, we will be building houses on there. So I mean, it is possible, as you've just rightly pointed out there. There's so much you can do on this. I welcome this paper. It's a good bit. And again, Wolverhampton, we can give you countless examples of what we've done.
I think you mentioned canals, and it's a very good example. I mean, in Birmingham, they've used the canal system to great advantage in the regeneration of that part of the city. We all know there's more miles of canals here than there is in Venice. But I think there are areas, and Warsaw's one, where we've underutilised the value of the canal. I mean, the canal in Walsall comes right into the town centre. But the reason people don't come in on their narrow boats is there's no fresh water and no toilets. Two of those things which are essential for people who want to come in to the town. You know, you take one in and you let one out, but there you go. So I think we've got some real work to do because town centres are no longer a retail destination. They have to be reinvented. And the only way to reinvent them is to make it a leisure destination and put people back in town centres to live, which is what we're doing with our pots of money. Plus the fact permitted development now allows 2 stories on any retail unit without planning permission. Somebody gave me a very interesting thought yesterday, which I'm writing to government to put into the new MPPF if we get it. If somebody wants an out of town store, you can have an out of town store, but you've got to have a town centre presence. Now that seems so simple to do, and yet would liven town centres. So if you've got the major retailers like the Currys of the world and Marks and Spencers, who want their out of town centres, because we all know the best shopping trolley's got a 2-litre engine, but they should have a central point where people can identify their brand and their product in the town centre that is supporting the out of town unit.
Interesting.
Chair, I think there's great opportunities with this, but I'd also add in, we can also use some of this land for our resilience purposes.
Sorry, or what?
We can use some of this land and make sure it's part of a holistic piece of work around resilience as well to the climate change. Because if we just keep and have concrete, we will flood, we will have problems. So some of this land can be part of our broader resilience as well.
Good point. Yes.
I just wanted to pick up what the councillor from Wolverhampton said, because the examples he gave are really, really good illustrations, because I'm sure.
Not all go to
No,
Wolverhampton.
no,
to make that point.
but I'm sure the board will be aware that each example he raised has secured funding from this board.
Yep.
There's quite an interesting example of actually the impact of the funding we've had thus far. So I would continue to urge members around the table to continue to submit proposals to us and develop, as you've said, Chair, high quality business cases which we can support on in order to access the funding that we've now secured. But I just thought it was interesting, given the point you made, Councillor, that actually those projects, particularly Brewer's Yard, Co-op Street, Chair, has secured over £5 million from the West Midlands Combined.
And what a fantastic opportunity that was, that somebody took that grass to the nettle and built it out. It really is good. I've been there. But the Iron Infirmary is still off the agenda because it's too expensive at the moment. We'll keep our eyes on it.
Space.
Right. Okay. Moving on then. Thanks, Pat. Moving into the private session. Bye, Mr. Weller. Always a pleasure to see you.
Could there be a public forum item at the very end, please, about the 23,000 square metres
No.
wasted?
No, the agenda's public, and providing we stick to the agenda, we are within the law. Sorry.
Yeah, but the law could change to allow a public forum item.
No,
at the
only
end.
the public session,
Please.
not the private session, rather. Yes.
The recording.
Just wait for Wendy to stop the recording.
Still doing good.
Just turn that off then.
Sometimes he lingers and tries to.
Just
Peter's not decking.
I just drop security.
That wasn't